without further ado, I'll allow Jack Blum, our moderator, to take over the conversation. Thank you, Jack.
Hello, everybody. I should let you know that James has actually moderated hundreds and hundreds of these. So if he starts to ask questions or like get into, we'd have to stomp him. He's got to get used to this new role. Let's just get a sense of who is in the room. I want to welcome anyone who's watching online. I gather we have some dozens or millions of Canadians watching, somewhere in between there. But in terms of in the room, let's just get a sense. Put your hand up if you feel like you're just starting out or interested or have done a couple of things but really trying to feel your way in this wonderful industry. Put your hand up. Got some of those. Welcome to you. What if you're kind of established, you've been doing it for a couple of years anyway, and you maybe want to make a change or you're want to level up a bit? Some of those. Quite a few there. And then people who have been doing it for a while, they're in this business wondering what they're doing with their lives. Put your hands up there. Okay, good. It seems like it's about a 30-30. You get the idea, split on this. So great. Often people we talk at you and then you ask questions. I want to encourage you to throw your hand up at any time. Interrupt at any time if you have a question. Let's just make it a conversation. Ditto to the people online. I gather we have ways of hearing your voice or making your voice heard, and we welcome your questions and comments as well. So Carol, let me start with you. Is this a good time right now? Is it a good time to make a change, to move up, to get in, to do something?
It's a good time in Canada. I would say that because of the strike, it's a hard time. There's not as much production as there usually is, but I think it's always a good time to be exploring what's out there and what you can do. And this is a time when people are a little less busy, so it's a good time to do reach outs and have coffee and do a lot of learning.
My sense is that in general, in the last few years, stuff up here has really been growing quickly.
Totally. Last year was, at one point, there was 4 Tier A television shows going at the same time, and we were all fighting for crew. Last year was the most insane time the North has ever had.
Cool. That's good. People fighting for crew.
Fighting for crew.
Excellent.
We have a crew member named Haley. I fight for her all the time, and it's true. We go to the death.
James, if in terms of strategies then for someone that wants to either make inroads or level up somewhere or graduate, what do you see in terms of how people might approach this, or what a good piece of advice might be?
Well, I think right now is an interesting time, as you say, because there's a bit of a downturn in, kind of industry production, and so it's actually a good time to develop indie projects and to reach out to, really established talent, and potentially, if you're a producer or director, writer, work on a short film, because short films, of course, are a platform for lots of other things and a way to demonstrate your talent, and you can actually get some, Tier A, HO heads of department and other people on your show, because they may not be as busy as they were last year.
So it's a really interesting window right now, just because of the strike. And I mean, no one really knows when that's going to end, but let's just say that maybe in the next month or so, people get tired of sitting around and they come to the table and they make a deal. What's going to happen at that point up here?
I think it's going to be like post-COVID, which was last year was insane in the North because everyone was trying to make things after COVID and catch up. I think after the strike, it's going to be like that all over again. It's going to be so busy. Everyone's going to be desperate to catch up and make a lot of things. And I think it'll probably be, hopefully, busier than it's ever been. Let's hope, right? Let's hope. Yeah.
Let's hope.
I can respond to that a bit, because keep in mind that, Canada and Ontario typically have been a blend of domestic production and service production, aka American production. Some of the domestic production relies on American stars to raise their financing, to put the package together and make the show. So many of them don't. Many indie features have actor-based cast, and they're not reliant on SAG-AFTRA. They're not reliant on Writers Guild of America talent to drive their shows. So I would say that that's another opportunity, is to keep an eye out for those independent projects that may actually have an opportunity to squeeze themselves into the marketplace here. Because when you're at full bore with 4 Tier A shows, it's very difficult for an independent producer like myself doing maybe my next feature film to actually get to those crews. I mean, there's another part of that we can step to in terms of opportunities for next level.
Yeah, so
folks.
just picking up on that, very specifically, what roles make you crazy to find at times when things are busy and everyone's working? Who are the hardest people to get onto your team?
I would say accounting.
Accounting.
Accounting always.
The most glamorous
Yeah.
job in the film industry.
Yeah, good accountants are hard to come by. When they're good, Haley is an accountant. You hold on tight. I would also say ADs. I think really good ADs are. It's not that they're hard to find; it's that they work all the time. So they're usually busy and making lots of money.
And is that up and down, first, second, third, the whole team?
Yeah, I think the whole gamut. The whole gamut. What are other departments? What do you think?
I think that those are 2 of the toughest. I think one of the challenges I've found is the level of logistics required to shoot in the North and the production team that you require. So, finding production manager or line producer who knows how to work up here. If I'm based in Toronto, so I don't have all the local contacts required. I think that's also, starting with a great production coordinator. That's also another area that can be hard to find when things are busy.
So lower down the food chain, as it were, if you had your eye on, I want to end up a busy first AD, where would you find your way in there? Where would you find your way into coordination or to some of these other roles that are eventually going to be very happy for you?
We're a full union show, so our ADs would be DGC, and the DGC has a training program where you can get in. And I think then if you want to be an AD, getting in there and then doing some PA and getting your hours.
Let me clarify.
Sorry.
You have to be a DGC member to access the DGC training program.
They have a program that you can get in to train before you're a member, that you
Great.
apply to be in. And so then we can permit people if they're not members, but that's for ADs, that's usually a good way. And accounting is similar as well. There is, we're going to have a trainee this year. So we bring people in the entry level so they can move up and we can train them up.
Is accounting a union position?
Accounting is also a union position.
IA? Or?
DGC.
Okay.
Yeah, but also with both ADs and with accounting, we've permitted tons of people. So if people aren't in the union, but they want to get into the industry and they're from up here and they're excited and keen, then we have permitted people before. So they don't necessarily need to be a member, but the DGC needs to say it's okay.
Union, non-union. Oh, questions. We got questions. Thanks for someone mentioning that. Great, fantastic.
Okay, just a quick question about the accounting. What are the requirements, like the experience or educational requirements for that?
It's a good question. I think to get into accounting, it can be pretty broad. I think there's a wide variety of people. I think some people have accounting in school, and some people just got in early and have learned on the job and then moved their way up. I think, like anything in film, there's no blueprint. I think everyone's a little different. Would you agree?
Yeah, although I think that production accounting particularly, I mean, it's not just accounting. You're not doing accounting for a company. It's a very specific skill set that is related to accounting, but is kind of specialized and niche to some degree. So I think that obviously getting work on a show, maybe in a second position to support a production accountant who has experience would be a way to go. I also think that there's an identified gap there that I believe the industry and the DGC is trying to address, and that there are some training programs. I know in Toronto, it's like Centennial or one of those colleges was running a production accounting intro to production accounting program, and I don't think you had to have prior accounting experience necessarily. So there are some gateway opportunities there.
Are those like full semester programs, or is it like something more quick and quick hit?
It's something more quick because a lot of their training is kind of continuing ed at this point to help with skill set enhancement in the industry. Because I mean, there are gaps when things are busy. There are gaps across every department.
Right. I'm sorry, Carrie, is there anyone in the room that can speak to training up here, any colleges or courses or things that?
I'm not talking about colleges or courses or anything, but I have at least 3 friends.
Mike?
I have at least 3 friends that I recommended as accountants for productions because they were desperate for accounting, and they told me that they just got in with their accounting experience, regular accounting experience, and in about 2 or 3 weeks they
And
were
general personal hygiene, and they're good.
Yeah, in about 2 or 3 weeks they were completely fine with everything. It was just the film industry in terms of accounting is not that extraordinary, sorry to say. It just has a few things that you need to know, and you can apparently, from those guys, you can apparently learn them very quickly on
Terrific,
set by
thank you.
doing them.
Is there anyone who can speak to training up here, just while we're on that?
Hey, we have our accountants, right? Like,
Cool.
Haley is our first, and she's amazing.
Cool.
Haley, where did you train?
Well, I started on Letterkenny. I was in school for accounting, and I stumbled into it, and have been working in film ever since. But the North is very special. Like Kara said, when you're in Toronto, you can't just usually get permitted onto a show as easy because there's the GAP program in Toronto with the DGC. So you have to get submitted into that, you have to be approved, all of that. So you have to go through all of that before you can work in film. Where up in the North, you can be permitted up to 150 days, and then that gets you into membership with the DGC. So I think we're very fortunate in the North that you can gain all that experience before having to wait a year and get into it that way. So, yeah.
Cool, yes?
If we can keep the questions towards the end, Jack, if that's okay.
All right.
If everyone can hold their questions for.
All right.
Follow
Well,
the
you give
rules,
me a
Jack.
big wave when it's time to go to questions. Kara, did you want to speak to that too, or are we into? Oh, so let me just ask you then: union, non-union. Speak to that.
I've only ever worked union, so I can't really speak to that. I think we have great relationships with the union. We love working with them. We love how much they take care of their members, and I think it really does mean that we're getting a quality of work because these members have gone through a process and gone through the training within their union. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's good people who are non-union as well, but we've always worked union, and it works really well for us.
Yeah, I would say, there's a push-pull there. As an independent, feature producer, particularly, Canadian feature producers are always scrambling for scarce dollars. If you have a well-financed TV show, that's kind of a different, a different picture. But I think the increasingly challenging aspect of shooting in the North is that the kind of financing, kind of budget that you can actually put together gets harder and harder to go with a fully union crew. With all the fringes and all the tiers and so on, depending on the size of the budget. So I think that producers from the South, speaking personally, are looking to the North to come up and shoot here, specific kinds of movies, but still in the, maybe $2 million and below range as a kind of a bootstrap indie. And that's really where, you're looking for non-union crews, which again is another opportunity for people to break in. But as Kara was saying, then, you're really scrambling to get people with some experience and or, some dispensation opportunities for maybe more experienced people to bring on more junior people.
And I think in like commercials or shorts, as we were talking about, I think that's an opportunity. I have a lot of friends who are non-union who work in commercials and work in reality TV, and they really love it and it works really well for them. I think especially in factual and especially in reality in the city, it's almost entirely non-union.
So if you're someone trying to carve a path, and is it simply, okay, I'm going to take any opportunity I can get, non-union, get some experience, and eventually get into the union? Are there people that just make their home at indie and commercials and don't even bother? Is it, or as you say, there's no one size fits all?
Yeah, I think there's no one size fits all. I think some people really love working in commercials or love working in factual. So for them, the union doesn't quite make sense. And I think for us, We have had people who have come from that world that we've permitted, but yeah, both things I think work. It depends on what you love and what you want to do. I think scripted television, and I think scripted television is historically pretty unionized. So if you want to work in television, then the union's definitely the way to
Television
go.
drama.
Television drama, television comedy, scripted. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's partly driven by the financing available, because if you have an order from a network and it gets, reasonably financed, and you can go to Canada Media Fund and all those sorts of routes, then and you have a franchise like Letterkenny, then you're good to go. Putting a feature budget together, every new film is a different product. It's an untested product, and so as a producer, you're constantly scrambling to try and raise that.
Yeah, and you don't have those
financing.
broadcast envelopes that make things easier, or...
Well, yeah, and most feature films don't have access to the Canada Media Fund, so they're going to the Telefilm Feature Fund, which is now kind of a lottery. Of course, NUHSC plays a big role up here in terms of attracting production, and in terms of even, producers from other jurisdictions coming here to take advantage of that. So I guess, we could talk a bit about that in terms of the role of the NUHSC, maybe.
Please, go ahead.
Well, you got a question?
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask
How
a
does,
question.
how does the NOFC work up here, James?
Well, I'm almost a newbie. I mean, so I have a film screening this afternoon. If you have time to come over.
I used to be funny, 3:30.
I used to be funny at 3:30, and it's a little bit of a case study because we tried to shoot it here, and I guess I can talk about this a little bit. That was the intention. I scouted Sudbury. I scouted Sault Ste. Marie. We were looking at Sault Ste. Marie, and then my background is as a production executive. I was segueing into being a producer, getting lots of kind of local input on trying to figure out the budget and costs, and working with the NUHFC. So they've been incredibly supportive, and I'm trying to get another project going up here. Open invitation. We actually had money from the NUHFC committed, but in the end, in terms of like the union, non-union, push and pull.
Dollars you have to spend and all of that.
How much you have to spend in the north, but then availability of talent. I mean, it can be a real juggle in terms of managing the numbers. And so NUHFC has now, they've been able to slowly raise the bar in terms of their expectations around local spend, which is great for hiring, local labor, because that's part of the focus of what they're looking for is to leverage their investment. But it can be challenging, to find all the talent you need. Some people you have to bring from the south. I would say actors were kind of our biggest challenge, because I realized, that two-hander? It's not really a two-hander. There's 25 speaking parts and 25 locations. And so the closer we got to production, the more I realized, this may not quite fit the model of an easier project to manage logistically and financially in the north. And so I think the NUHFC is an amazing source of financing for independent producers, but you have to really know, you have to know how to navigate, and they change the rules quite regularly.
With regards to that, do you want to say something about deeming? I gather things have changed around deeming.
Yeah, so I think they recently changed the rules so that you can no longer deem Southerners. So all of your northern labor is pure northern labor costs, and all of your northern spend, well, that was always northern spend.
You used to be able to bring someone
Yeah.
up and say, yeah, for these purposes, you're a northerner.
Yeah, if they were training someone below
As
them.
long as they were training
Exactly.
a real northerner.
Yeah, if they were training a real northerner, then you could deem them, but that's no longer the case. So all northern labor goes towards your northern spend now.
So can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Am I allowed to?
Watch
Yes.
it. Watch it, but go
Yeah.
where you want.
You'll let me go with that. So Kara, did you, with your experience, because you've been working here for years, did you find that training protocol actually worked to develop new talent and depth of talent?
I would say sometimes. I would say probably like 50% of the time, because it would be an opportunity for a DP to have to sit down with a trainee and go through a training program. I think what happened with us, which is both a really good thing, but for that program, maybe not, is we've had the same crew for 7 years. So eventually it's like, the same people are training the same people as we've been here before. So I think that's where it worked less for us. But I do think bringing Southerners to the North to train the Northern crew is incredibly beneficial. And if it is something as formal as a training program like that, or to have incredibly experienced directors, incredibly experienced DPs up here, means that we can train those people from here, which doesn't exist yet. There aren't DPs from the North. I know there are, but there aren't the level that we need yet.
If you've done a couple shows, it doesn't really mean that you're, an expert yet. I mean,
exactly.
Hopefully it's been very successful, but you learn by doing in this business, generally speaking.
100%.
Production designers, I would say, are another area where that depth of talent really counts, and it's a very can be very complicated training that a production designer has, from design, architecture, whatever kind of influences, not necessarily something that is that accessible up here.
Yeah.
All right, so while we're talking about north-south,
Yeah.
stay or go. I mean, Canada is a country where it doesn't matter where you are.
Right.
There's always someplace else you could go to have more opportunity, more money, more success, whatever. It doesn't matter where. How do you feel about that with regards to the Northern Ontario?
Stay. I mean, I'm from here. I'm from Timmins originally. I lived in Toronto for 15 years. Being able to work in TV and live here, it's the dream. I feel so lucky all the time. But yeah, our crews are great. I love the people. If I could make television in Northern Ontario forever, I would stay.
Sounds good. Sounds good to me. Sounds good to me. I mean, it takes me an hour just to get out of the city now to anywhere that is remotely natural. If you can, cut a lifestyle here and do what you love, why wouldn't you?
And does that imply to younger folks, people getting in, people starting out? Do you think the opportunities here really justify hanging in and getting your on-set experience and all of that?
I think it's year by year. I think last year I would have said for sure. I think this year a little less so. I think that there's less production, and so.
But there's also fewer places to go. It's the same everywhere.
Yeah, and it's the same everywhere. So I think it's case by case. And so if you have to go to Toronto for a bit because that's the only place there's work, while you wait hopefully for the North to get some more projects, I think it's case by case. I mean, I wish all of the good Northerners would stay here, but that we don't always have enough production to keep them.
Yeah, I mean, it's also a question of, and this is true of any crew, on any production over the years, is I've always found that there's two different kinds of crew members. There are the kind of filmmaker, passion-driven crew members who may be doing craft service, but they love it. That's what they live for. They want to be part of this team and make something interesting. And then there's people who are looking at it as a career option to show up for a decent paycheck. And it's a little bit more interesting than a 9-to-5 trade on a subdivision or whatever you're doing both. And it keeps it interesting. I mean, even in this industry, there are some shows that are like, okay, we're cranking this out again. It's a little familiar, and here's something new and interesting. I'm going to go do that. But I think the challenge is maybe particularly for the people who are passion driven about filmmaking to continue, a consistent career here, but also as they level up, to find new challenges and projects at a level of budget that provide them with new opportunities, whether it's lighting or art department or whatever.
Allow them to grow.
I want to go work on Star Trek.
I think that's so smart, and I think for us, we've been so lucky in that Letterkenny started as an incredibly low-budget show, and then grew from there because of its popularity, and then the opportunity to do Shoresy, which is such a different show in so many different ways. It was an opportunity not only to challenge ourselves, but also challenge this crew. It's like we've shot 80 episodes of people sitting and talking. Let's shoot some crazy hockey, and that was a chance for our crew to grow and learn a bit, and us too.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think there are probably a lot of questions, so why don't we move to that now? I want to make sure there's time for that. Yeah, we got one over here, but wait for the mic.
On the front?
Wait for the mic.
Hi. Oh, hello. Is this working? Hi. I was just wondering.
Hold it up.
Is my getting it right?
There we go.
Hello. So I was just okay. I have to do this. So I was just more of like an outsider looking in. It seems that a lot of funding for the features that are made in Canada seem to have come from Telefilm and a bunch of like other organizations. Do you think this way of funding? Do you think it's kind of holding us back when we compare ourselves to other countries?
That's all you.
When we're just
Yeah, that's you, James, and I'm the moderator. I don't touch that.
I'm not sure holding us back from what. I mean, the real challenge if you're
From taking
interested in making features is that there's not enough money in the system. I mean, and I guess you could say there's not enough money in the global marketplace either. I mean, we're facing a real challenging time for independent feature films. Partly because there's a huge demand on the financing available. Telefilm has, slowly increased its budget, but they're still only funding, in terms of lower budget films, like 15 films a year in Ontario. And they're also trying to be incredibly respectful of diversity and inclusion, whether that's based on, kind of diversity of origin or diversity of geography. There's lots of support being spread fairly thin, I guess. As an independent producer who looks to Telefilm to get some of my financing, even with experience, it's really challenging. So I think it's not for the faint-hearted, but so you really have to be persistent and find different ways to do it. There could be private equity. I would probably recommend you don't look to use personal finances if you can avoid it, although that ends up being, most producers reinvest their fees to kind of make the budget whole because there's always a gap in the financing. So, but it's, producing's not for the faint-hearted, and we're probably the last ones to get paid. And that's just the reality of this crazy business.
But in terms, I will step in and say, in terms of like the idea of somehow holding us back because government subsidy or agency subsidies discourage private investment, I wouldn't say so. I mean, you always have to look at where's the money coming back? Where's the audience? Are they going to go and see it? Are you going to have a way to distribute it? No, jump in.
No, that's very true. That I mean, it's part of a much bigger conversation about filmmaking and the state of the marketplace and the streamers and what's going on in terms of regulation, and it's a bigger conversation. I do think that you're incredibly in a great place in the north, whatever city you're based in, to access support from different resources here and tap into the NOHFC, because you can probably draw from a very local creative and technical pool to make your project, which will make them very happy. I mean, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you may be one of the few producers who's really based here. I know that there's a handful. I mean, there's Anselmo in North Bay.
Yep.
There's Derek Diorio. There's what's her name? Rosalie in Sault Ste. Marie. Rosalie and Jennifer.
Yeah, I think. I mean, and Selma makes so much. I think we're one of the most consistent. I think we've had an office up here for 8 years, and since then, we've made at least 12 episodes a year, if not more. So I think we're definitely one of the most consistent. And I didn't say this earlier, and this is off topic, but one thing I will say is the NOHFC was actually the reason we are here is because of the NOHFC. My boss produced a film a million years ago called Cass and Dylan, and that was partly financed by the NOHFC. And when Mark came here, he was like, why don't we make everything here? And so that's kind of what we've done for the last 7 years. And so,
NOHFC.
Yeah, so the NOHFC really is the reason we're here. And continue to give us so much support and financing and allow us to do bigger things in a way that, is spectacular. So I didn't answer your question, but I just wanted to give that aside.
Well, I was going to say, does that help to kind of position your question? That there's no one route to kind of as a filmmaker as opposed to a crew member. There's no one easy route to getting your show made. I mean, for me, one of the great success stories is still Sleeping Giant.
Oh my God! Like one of the best Canadian movies. It's magic. Yeah. Sorry.
Beautiful.
I love that movie.
Question?
I would also say in terms of
Except
taking
for Karen.
off, yeah, I'm so sorry, but Canadian films have had a pretty, Blackberry was a huge success, and that was a Canadian movie financed by, we have stuff that's taken off.
And Boy in the Woods, is that the closing night film? Was that shot up here?
It's the NOHFC Gala film, I think. Yeah,
that was shot up here.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
North Bay.
You have a question?
Yeah, hey, thank you. So for someone coming from the South with an idea that, because of the idea itself, because of the story itself, makes sense for the North, makes sense for trying to navigate all these delicious resources, the NOHFC and Scion, can you guys speak to a good starting point? Is it to find an amazing producer like James to help you navigate Scion and the NOHFC? Is there should we just be all on the Scion list looking for, just querying every film professional about the project itself? What's a good starting
Or
point?
do you just need a good moderator?
Yeah.
That's
just
always
need
the
a great
answer.
guy like Jack, you know?
James.
Jack's available, I hear. Well, I would say a good start is to find a local production manager who knows the ropes up here. Location manager and production manager understand that. Well, I'm going out with the City of Sudbury Film Office tomorrow morning to look for some locations for a project I'm looking to shoot here. Then there's the tour that's being, the kind of tomorrow as well. But I think you're right that there are some, there's some projects that are narratively driven, organically obvious to shoot up here. I'm not sure that NOHFC is funding any more Cabin in the Woods horror movies, but that's certainly been a bit of a staple over the years. And you've got 4 cast in 1 location. That's great. If you're starting from an organically northern story that could be shot, in the wilderness on a lake in a small city, great. But I think that having a local production manager who can help you figure out your strategy in terms of budget and financing, that's probably an important starting point. If you have a script, find a PM who can do a breakdown for you and figure out what it's going to cost to shoot here and how you're going to raise the money.
Agree. Yeah.
As someone who has approached and hired union talent for non-union work, I've quickly noticed that union rules are very case by case. There are some unions that don't care what you do, others that explicitly prohibit you from doing non-union work, and others still that have very rigid prerequisites for doing work outside of their union. What I wanted to ask was what you feel the kind of what you should be looking for when joining a union, and how unions can widen your net versus how they can narrow it, like what the standard is in your eyes.
Great question.
Yeah, I think it really depends on what you want to do. I think if you're like, I love Big Brother, I love Amazing Race, I want to work in that kind of content, joining a union would probably hurt you because they aren't unionized. I think it really is also dependent on the union, and I don't want to speak to them in terms of what shows they're going to give dispensation on for you to work on if it's non-union. So I think you just have to explore with each union. There also might be a reason why that union's saying you should not work on that project. Maybe they know something about that producer not paying people. Like, the reasons why unions don't give dispensation is usually based on some kind of facts. But again, I don't want to speak for them. They're all very talented people, and they'll explain all of that to you.
Can I ask you a question, Kara?
Please.
So
Are you okay with this?
In terms of approaching the unions here,
Yeah.
what's the point of contact? Because in my work approaching the unions here, there's kind of a steward. I mean, everybody seems to be a working member, and they're also trying to run the local.
Yeah, so I probably would deal with all the same people. We have a Northern Ottawa union called IA 634, and so our business rep is also a crew member, and he's a Northerner. Every other union, our direct contact is with their person in Toronto. Yeah.
So
yeah.
is that, just to clarify, I think IATSE are the northern cities you've mentioned and Ottawa? Is
Yeah,
that
so
true?
634, Haley, you would know better than me. 634 is basically Northern Ontario and I believe Ottawa.
But DGC does not have a regional office up here, so you have to go through
Yeah.
the local in
Toronto. Yeah, and ACTRA
for better or
also
worse.
ACTRA also doesn't have an office in here. They have an office in Ottawa, which ACTRA should get an office in Northern Ontario. So yeah, aside from IA 634, every other union is through their Toronto office.
Hi.
From the
everyone.
stream.
Yeah, we got a question from the chat here. Kenny asks, what advice would you give for an independent producer to find that initial funding amount that would supplement a grant application? Can you please talk a little bit more about private equity as a starting point?
It's all you again.
Private equity hard to find. I would say if a producer is developing something, which is the first stage, whether you're at the writing stage or whether you're at the packaging stage, there are some sources of funding from some of the agencies like Ontario Creates, like Telefilm, and if you're an emerging producer, you probably need to ally yourself with an executive producer who has a track record that they will, they would allow you to apply at that level. Otherwise, of course, there are Arts Council funding sources. I'm working with a writer-director who has Canada Council money to do a short, based on a feature that she wants to make. So there's no one route. I think private money is actually, friends, family, your real estate agent. You really have to hustle for the private money.
I would just like to comment on that. I find in a lot of cases, especially with young filmmakers, they really want to get their film made. They haven't given a lot of thought to where it's going to end up, who's going to watch it, who's going to want to watch it. Some projects are commercial projects. They look and feel something like something that you have seen be successful. And some projects are personal projects, or for whatever reason, you feel it's really important that they get made, but you can't necessarily point to where the cash is going to come back. And I think that that's a really, really good, they're both great. I mean, I'm not saying do one and not the other, but where you go for financing and how you get it financed always rests on what your hopes are for the money coming back. And unless it's your Uncle George, if you're going to someone to write you a check out of their pocket, it's really a good idea to have a case that it's going to come back.
That's a great point, Jack. And I think understanding the marketplace and doing that research is important. What does your film look like? What films are reference films that have done, that have been successful? Is it a commercial prospect that you can pitch to an investor? Genre is big right now. I mean, I'm unfortunately, I tend to veer towards art house dramas, which are like, nobody's interested until you launch your movie at South by Southwest, which is what happened to I Used to Be Funny. Went from couldn't get arrested to, now we have a U.S. deal and an international sales agent. So, but I think that understanding the market's really important. And if, focusing on more commercial fare earlier in your career is also a great track. I mean, you can, I know a guy who was making small movies for about $250,000, a little bit of a cabin in the woods story, but he was able to get some equity from a sales company, about $100,000 as a guarantee for the film. So, that starts to actually add up to something you can do.
Yeah, excellent. And we will get to you, I'm sorry. Watch films. If you want to make films, watch them. Watch what's being made up here, watch what's being made in Canada, watch what's being made elsewhere. Just don't stop watching them and get yourself an idea of what's out there and what people are watching.
Which of course is why Cinefest is so
Which
great.
is why we love
Exactly.
Cinefest. Thank you, Cinefest. Okay, back to questions. Sorry.
Can I just jump on that really quick? I just want to say it's one of the first questions I ask people when we're hiring like an associate producer or someone that I want to work directly with me. What Canadian TV are you watching? What Canadian films are you watching? If they can't answer either of those questions, then I don't have time. Like, this is our industry. Let's make sure we're watching it.
Thank you.
Yes, I agree. I'm going to jump back to the union talk.
We need union reps up
Have
here.
fun, yeah. We're
Just
gonna,
because
none of us
it's
can talk.
confusing to me.
Are we going to rap
I'm
on
with-
the union?
I know. I'm afraid I'm going to get in trouble from this fucking panel.
No, it's a good one. Because I'm with IATSE, right? I'm a production coordinator. So, but you don't have IATSE here.
We have four. So
Yeah.
we don't. We d- so IATSE 411, which is what you would have been under if you were a coordinator. We use that union, but we connect with their office in Toronto. So there isn't an office in the north here for that union, but we use that union. Does that
Okay,
make
so
sense?
if I'm transferring from Vancouver's 891, I have to go through Toronto to work
Yes.
here.
Yeah.
As a production coordinator.
I would imagine so. You should ask IA because I don't know, but I would bet.
We do a disclaimer. Nothing
Yes,
we
exactly.
have said on behalf of the unions has any validity whatsoever. Talk to the unions. Thank you. Okay, who's next? Yeah.
Yeah, I've made about 15 or 20 short films in my spare time.
I'm sorry.
Over the years. And
Good for you.
And lots of them are just for fun. And I've entered a few years ago in Cinefest. But I wonder if I'm working on a third draft of a full script. But are film festivals the only way to get them seen, and is it always about getting seen so they can get money back as well?
You mean independent features? Is
Yes,
that
yes, independent.
There's a million ways. Film festivals are good.
Well, I think film festivals are great to get to get some visibility for a finished film. Depending on the festival, it may or may not be a market. This is a great little industry gathering, and small is beautiful, I find, because you can actually make meaningful connections with people. But the reality is that a lot of the business in the marketplace happens at bigger events like Toronto, like Cannes, like Berlin, and so South by Southwest kind of American film market. So there, I would say that there is a level of independent producer, and there's government funding now to allow producers to travel to those markets to make those connections. Or you can also kind of like Jack said, look at the films that you like and the kind of film you're trying to make. Figure out who the Canadian distributors are or the Canadian broadcasters, and start there, because ultimately, you need a domestic market partner to access a lot of the funding that's available for feature films. I was on my way back from Berlin after losing my actor, after just about giving up on I Used to Be Funny. It was probably also the beginning of the pandemic, and I was running from the Italian border being closed. Anyway, on the way home, I watched a bunch of Canadian movies. That's what people do on Air Canada. And every one of them was distributed by Level Film. And I went, you know what? Those are the guys I need to be working with. And that's who I'm working with.
Great. Yes?
What do you look for in an associate producer?
So I said the thing about watching Canadian film or television. I really love someone who's proactive, who tries to answer their own question before they ask it. So it's not that I don't like questions, it's that I feel like if you're being proactive and trying to teach yourself, that's something I think is really good for an associate producer, because that's something I have to do all the time. I think a willingness to learn, good with people. My job is 90% dealing with people. Just fucking work hard. And I think that's incredibly important. I think I want someone who's going to be as passionate and as excited as I'm going to be, which is pretty passionate.
The golden quality that I have seen is being able to look down the road before anyone else, if possible, and go, oh, that's going to be a problem in a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Totally. Being able to anticipate needs and problems is so important. Like with my boss, I want to try to anticipate what his problems are going to be or what he's going to need, and I feel like that makes us work well together. Yeah.
So this gets us into something I wanted to address, which has to do with attitude and what employers want from workforce. there are some people I have found, young people, coming in who feel that if they have sent an email, they have done the job. Or and even making a phone call is a challenge. And the idea that I think, and you can confirm or deny, but if you think of any given problem as always being in your court, like the ball never leaves your court until that problem is struck off the list, that I think is a really helpful quality that employers value.
You should put that on a T-shirt.
The ball is always in your court.
Yeah.
When we hire people, it's the first thing we say. The ball is always in your court.
Okay. I was going to say, maybe cut it down to a one line. But
I think, we have one here, sorry.
Yes, I have a question. Do you believe that the Greater Sudbury would have the infrastructure to produce a feature as a whole? Everything done over here?
Do you mean everything in terms of like post and all, like what do you mean by infrastructure and the whole thing?
Pre-production, production, and post-production and distribution?
I can't, so the pre-production and production, we do all of that in Northern Ontario. Our crews are mostly from here, our offices are here, our studios here, our locations are here, we do all of that here. We do a tiny bit of our post here, but we do most of our post in Toronto, and that's largely just based on the relationship we've had for a really long time. But I know that you can do post here, and people do it here all the time, and they do it really well. So I would say the answer is yes, 100% you could do everything. Distribution, I don't know, though.
well, if you had a distributor who wanted to set up shop in the north, it's a pretty virtual business these days. You know, they'd probably be traveling a lot, but they're traveling a lot anyway. So, I mean, I think there's a sense that you need to be somewhere in a hub still, but so much of our business is virtual and on Zoom. I don't think that's the case anymore. So, yeah, you know, maybe there's good room for a distributor up here, you know, Raven Banner North.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have a question here.
Okay. Just thinking from somebody who is brand new to the industry and doesn't know the different roles, so, you know, you've got AD and gaffer and this and that. Is there one place that you can find out?
I am so glad you asked that question. You can go to realcanada.ca.
Whoa!
And I am not kidding. Realcanada.ca, real opportunities, and there is a big, robust 100 jobs listed, profiled, what they do, who they work with, what the teams are, what the department. Just go and do that. And I'm so glad you asked that question for anybody who has a role, wants to explore other roles. It's actually a really fun site, and it's ours, and I'm very proud of it.
It's so fun.
And I think you owe her a drink later.
For sure. How are we for time? Can I just ask? Are we?
10
we're
minutes.
good? Yeah, we have something online.
Yeah, another question from the chat, this time from Mel A. How do you recommend folks navigate getting a distribution agreement?
Go, James.
Yeah.
Navigate. I'm not sure I'd use that word, but well, it starts with the script. I mean, it starts with the package. I think, you know, it's a little bit of a producer 101, but you know, you have to have something to sell. And so whether it's television or documentary or a feature film, you need to really put, I mean, these days the expectation is quite huge around creative materials to take to market. As I said, you know, there's different sources that you might be able to tap into to get some support for that. I do a lot of that, you know, my own development on spec. To be honest, I often am looking for writers who are working on spec. Because
and you
finished.
And you mean scripts? Do you want to explain what spec means?
Spec, yes. On spec, speculative work, which is basically writers write. You can't stop them, and I get pitched on scripts fairly regularly. Some of those writers are not Canadian, and so that's of less interest to me generally. But I think that you know, producers are always looking for material for properties that they think they can sell. And so then you need to figure out, you know, what's this movie going to look like? If you've got a great script, then, you know, put together a lookbook, which is like a you know, a pitch deck or whatever you want to call it. Who's going to be in your movie? what's the value, to Jack's point, what's the value of this film to the market? Because if you're talking to a distributor, they want to know how they're going to get any business out of it. How are they going to monetize your intellectual property? And so I think the packaging part of the process is quite substantial. And then you can get into a whole conversation about attaching, notable talent and stars and all that stuff, which is part of what's holding the business back right now, that you can't actually approach any SAG members with any offers to be in your show. So, I'm not sure when that gets resolved, how long the impact of that is going to be felt. But it's, the longer this goes, the longer there's going to be nothing in the pipeline, because actors can't even read scripts right now. On the SAG side, on the actress side, on the Canadian side, not a problem. So anyway, it's a big question.
Let me talk about it like this. If you're someone with a script or someone with a project, if you think about the end of the day when you have a movie in distribution, and you look at that list of names at the end, and all of those people are attached to the project, and they came on board at, one at a time. And at the high level, everybody who comes in and attaches themselves to the project is endorsing it. So when you get a director or a distributor, like it can happen in any order, but you go to the next person and say, look, so-and-so thinks this is good, they have attached. And then you talk the next person into, and the producing is really...
Well, and in fact, I think it's worth looking at how American producers get their shows financed, because for them, every project is kind of a business proposition. And they do a prospectus. So if you think of launching a business, it's like, okay, this isn't a restaurant, it's a movie. But who are your customers? And how are we going to, what's it going to look like? What's the design? What's the vision? And how are we going to monetize that?
Yeah, as your basic device. But in terms of the process, you take that, the minute you get someone attached, they become an asset that you use to leverage the next person to get attached. And that's the process of putting something together. What do we have? Yeah. Oh, we have someone with a mic.
Hi. Sorry, I hate to be this person. It's not a question, but it's a comment.
Cool.
But it's, I actually have the privilege of having 3 feature films actually in the Cinema Summit that I worked on in a production capacity.
Amazing.
And
bravo.
Okay, thank you. My film premiered on Tuesday, Leilani's Fortune. Check it out. Thank you. That wasn't it. But there's a few questions I just wanted to add, is that like the film Cafe Daughter was actually, the majority of it was done here. Shelley Nero, the director, will be here on Friday. She made a real important intention, like Rolling Pictures, which is the post house, major post house. They have a office in Sault Ste. Marie. We had it was like for people who are looking, like the Post is editors couldn't work from home. The composer was working from home, so it made it actually really easy to find, and we found assistant editors from the North when we were even working with Rolling Pictures in Toronto. So I would highly encourage folks to build up some Post talent, because you can work from home.
Yeah, great idea.
And get those tax credits, and also potentially buying a home out here. It's way cheaper than Toronto, because the northern tax credits. And the other piece, like even like you had a question about feature films, like Aura was almost completely shot here and completed here. And like my film, Leilani's Fortune, we started shooting here. So I think the industry definitely is very ripe for new, fresh energy and talent. And like there's so much, like I had no idea coming from Toronto, the ability. And like you mentioned, going from Park to like trying to get equipment from William F. White's in Etobicoke and trying to get it to Scarborough, it's like 7 hours. I would rather drive to Sudbury. So I just wanted to like kind of bring that, you folks touched on it a
White's
little
has
bit.
a depot in North Bay, don't they?
They have one here.
That's what I'm
Okay.
saying.
Okay.
Like 5 minutes down and for
Okay.
Aura, we were able to block the highway in the middle of the day, not the whole highway, but like just get a shot on a highway with a police car. Like that would be like next to impossible. And
So Emily, this is your next tagline. I would rather drive to Sudbury.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I have said that a few times. But
t-shirt.
that was my comment.
Thank you.
That's great.
That's so great.
Is there one more question here?
Hello again. Yeah, it's working. Why? Sorry, I forgot the question in between. It was about talent. What is it involved in a talent in order to make them help with the financing of a movie? Because I hear
What
that
does it
all the
take
time.
to attract a name? Is that what you're asking?
No. I hear that all the time. Oh, you need name talent in order to attract investors and money and to make your movie. And at the same time, I see movies that have American actors here that you never see anywhere, that don't go anywhere, but they have American actors. That's amazing. And I see a ton of movies on Netflix that have no one. No one. But they're on Netflix or on Amazon. People that you don't know, you've never seen anywhere. So now I'm thinking, wait a second, why is everyone telling me to hire talent and pay them a lot of money when that doesn't even make anything guaranteed for after? And I had this discussion with an ACTRA person that I won't name, and I challenged them. I was like, find me one Canadian actor, one, that is accessible to a low-budget movie that can actually guarantee that this movie is going to be made and sold. And the answer was crickets.
Can I jump in on that? It seems as though there are all these unknown actors, but in my view, there's an ecosystem. And there's a whole tier of people that are not yet super famous, but that distributors know, or studios know, or other directors know. And those people at a low level, when you're starting out with a low budget feature or an independent feature, those people do make a difference. Are they going to bring an audience in? Not necessarily. But they might bring you a director, or they might bring you a distributor, because those people are watching everything all the time, and they say, oh, that person is going to explode soon.
Or yes, or they might be a rising star, and you hook up on that. I mean, you know, we pitched Rachel Sennett very early on in the process of trying to finance I Used to Be Funny, when it was still called Brooke and Sam, and we've been working with an agency in Los Angeles, and they were helping us package, and they thought they could raise $500,000, but not with Rachel Sennett. And then so we went around like for 2 years trying to get, you know, the right name attached, and it takes like 3 months just to get them to read or whatever. And in the end, we didn't land anybody, and we went back to Rachel and said, let's just make the movie anyway. And now Rachel's actually a rising star.
And now she's that's why that's so, because she really is an it girl now. So it was like you had the right choice the entire time.
Exactly. And it was like, no, Rachel's going to be, you know, by the time this movie hits the market, we will know who she is. You know, she's in The Idol with The Weeknd. She's got Bottoms out, which just, I think, was released in Canada recently. It's been on 1,200 screens in the States. She co-wrote it with Ellen Seligman, who she did Shiva Baby with. So yeah, so and then Olga Petza, who is who's Brooke, our second lead. When we cast her was 15. I mean, how to find a 15-year-old Canadian star? There aren't any who can bring money. So find the best actors you can and figure out how to make your movie, really, is what it comes down to. The market sucks for pre-sales anyway, unless you're making a $10 million movie and can afford like $4 million above the line for that kind of caliber of talent. So I think, you know, figure it out and make the movie you want to make.
And this isn't my world at all, but correct me if I'm wrong, but genre usually isn't as dependent on talent.
Not at all.
How are we doing? 1, 2 more questions? No more questions? Are we done? What's the story? I'm looking at...
All right, we'll take 2 more questions.
Two more questions
here.
and make
We'll
them
start
good.
At the back with you, sir. Thanks. Go ahead.
From a writer's point of view, is it more attractive if the stories are set in the North? You know, like I have, I'm an author. I have a couple of novels that are set here in the North, and from an author's point of view, the sales are fantastic because of that locality. You know, it's people say, you know, I've been on that street where you murdered that guy, like, you know, and they find that really invigorating. So I don't know if it's the same thing for film.
Oh, I don't know about for film, but I think for I think why the stuff that we've made has been so successful is it's so specific. So Letterkenny is based on where he's from, which is Listowel. The show might as well just be called Listowel, to be completely honest. So it's so specific to his small town experience. Shoresy is Sudbury. And so shooting Sudbury for Sudbury has been so fun. And the jokes that you can make when you're specific to a place are so much better than when they're just broad nowhere's land. At least I feel that way in television.
Yeah, I would agree with that totally. What was the? There was a great. I actually really liked it. What was the police show that was shot in North Bay?
Carter or
Yeah,
Cardinal.
Cardinal. Yeah, Cardinal. It wasn't absolutely authentic because it was kind of a fictional town.
Algonquin Bay, I think is what they call it.
Something like that. Yeah, but I really love the atmosphere of that show. We ended up shooting I Used to Be Funny in Toronto, partly because it's set in Toronto, and we went, you know what? We're bending over backwards to try and make this work for the North. Maybe we should just go back to Toronto and get it done. So we did that. So I think the authenticity is absolutely a selling point. Then it has to be, a really good story, well told.
And the NOHFC, it is one of the things they ask now, just in terms of how you're using the landscape. And so I think something that's specifically here probably is extra attractive to them.
Last question.
My question is, the term genre has come up a few times. Can you give a list of what you said or what you think are the most popular genres at this point?
I think when we say genre, we more mean like horror or like that kind of, or like
horror, action, martial arts,
sci-fi.
Sci-fi.
There's a film that was shot here called Stellar that's opening on select screens on Friday, I think. That's an indigenous kind of sci-fi story. Yeah. So. Well, to be honest, hardcore horror has an evergreen market. I personally, it's not my taste, and I don't really watch it. There's stuff I don't want to have to try and unwatch. But there seems to be an evergreen market, and certainly pitching after COVID, I've found comedy, horror, entertainment, and people like to be scared. For whatever reason, they go on roller coasters. They go to slasher movies.
Comedy is dangerous. Be careful. Don't try it at home. Very, very dangerous.